Darksiders is a hack-and-slash action-adventure game which takes heavy inspiration from The Legend of Zelda for its overall game structure and pace, and God of War for its combat. Developed by Vigil Games under THQ and releasing in January 5th, 2010. The game takes place on a post-apocalyptic Earth, with the end times approaching, and with the end times, the horsemen must ride. In the first game, you play as War, voiced by Liam O'Brien, who voices my second favourite anime character of all time, Kenzo Tenma from Monster, and he does a really good job here. And this is something I think Darksiders really stands out with, its voice cast, with Mark Hamill giving a very good performance as the Watcher, and even Troy Baker playing Abaddon. Everyone in the voice cast gives their A game, and no one felt miscast here or out of place. So overall, the actual cast of the game is very strong. The story is a pretty basic setup. You have some world building at the start that reveals the rider's ride once all 7 sacred seals are broken, but War is sent early for some reason, and the Child Council, his bosses, threaten to punish him. However, the game would be over if that happened. So War is sent back to Earth to find out why he was sent early. And as you go through a rather nice array of different unique environments and fight everything from demons of hell to the angels of heaven, big spiders and zombies. So enemy variety here is really good and not an issue with the game. And to fight these enemies, War is given access to a range of weapons that all have their own combos and special moves. The Chaos Eater, his primary sword, and 2 secondary weapons with a scythe and gauntlets, allowing for a nice synergy between these weapons, as you can tag with both weapons back to back, making for some cool combo setup. In addition to this, like Zelda, War has some other bits and bobs, like a chain to grapple with, a horn, a boomerang shuriken thing, and a gun, just as necessities. These are used in the open world, create more complex puzzles as the game goes along, creating some decent puzzles which can stump you if you don't think about using each of the gadgets' utility. Also, War gets a horse. He's a good boy. I honestly really like the game's setup, taking the more fast and fun combat of God of War and then combining it with the engaging puzzles that The Legend of Zelda has, creates a game that really shines and stands out on its own compared to other games. However, an issue I have with Darksiders is that it doesn't do either of these things as good or better than what inspired it. So there could be a problem if you don't like old button mashing combat like God of War had, with not a lot of thinking in the combat, and the puzzles aren't as complex as something like Zelda. But the game makes up for the simple combat with some really good boss fights, which on paper are really good, but they sometimes do lack communication and can cause a bit of confusion in the boss fights. This mainly occurred to me with the spider boss fight, as I didn't actually realise you had to grapple up to kill her, so I was just fighting her straight for 10 minutes. But other than that, all the bosses are really fun and add a lot to the game, as they utilise different aspects of the game really effectively, be it combat, puzzles, or even ruin. Now, the story is pretty basic, as I said. I won't spoil it, but it does have some decent twists and turns, and I was always engaged with the story. If anything, the puzzles and dungeons sometimes overstay their welcome, and I really wanted to see what happened next in the story, despite its simple setup. And the game ends really strong with some good fights and a great end that sets up future games perfectly. I really like Darksiders as it pulls from the Christian mythology, which doesn't often get used in media, so it gives it a really nice different look and feel to the game, with characters like Samael, Azrael and Abaddon making appearances, making the game's world feel rich and storied, as using characters from mythology can help to easily flesh out a world a bit. War doesn't belong to either heaven nor hell, but the Child Council, and this explains why the player, you'll be fighting both sides, and also the game does a good job at making both sides both horrible and also relatable. That's what most people would believe. Heaven is good and hell is bad, but this is not true in the game. Throughout the game, a demon is the main character that will help you throughout your journey, and heaven is mainly to blame for what happens in the world of Darksiders. But as I said, I won't spoil it, and I highly encourage you to give the game a go. The game's art is also really good, with character designs and environments really standing out from other games. Characters like Volgrim to the Ashlands, Eden and War himself. The art team are extremely talented on the game and create some really cool designs for characters and environments. The music in the game as well is also really good, pulling a bit of inspiration from God of War's older themes, and which isn't bad, as it generally fits the tone and action the game is taking place. However, nothing in the game really stood out to me and wowed me. It's really good music for the game, but not music I would go out of my way to listen to. Overall, I do think Darksiders is worth the pickup right now. It's always really cheap, and for the price you get quite a bit of game here, with lots of collectibles and even a couple higher difficulties for you to go for, encouraging repeat playthroughs. Okay, let's finish up by giving it a Croc rating. Gameplay, I'm thinking an 8. Overall, it is really good. The fact that its puzzles can get a bit repetitive and they're never too crazy and complex, and the combat is a bit simple, does dock at a few points in my book, but it is really good in the gameplay standpoint. Story, again, I'm thinking an 8. It's really good, but it doesn't have a super deep story. It's very simple, but it is effective. It doesn't waste your time like other games, and it just sticks to its simple narrative, making it pretty fun to play through. Visuals, I'll give it a 9. The general art direction and character designs are really good, and I do love them. The game also has aged pretty well for a game that came out in 2010, with models all looking pretty good, and the remaster that was released for this game does help it a lot with updated textures. Content. This is probably the weakest part of the game, and I think it's a 6 for me. The game is chunky, taking me about 20 hours to beat, but there's no side content or anything extra in the game. The harder difficulties are nice, but there's not a lot extra in the game to actually bump its score higher up to a 7-8 territory. So most people will probably just play this game once and that'll be it. And music. I guess it's a 7. It's really good, but again, nothing stands out, all fitting with the game's themes and tone. Calculating the final Croc value, it gets a 37 out of 50. This is a strong 3 out of 5 game for me. A 3 out of 5 game is a game that is definitely worth the time and money you put into it, but the game does feel a bit simple at times, but it has some aspects that I truly love and others I'm not a fan of. To improve the game, I would just add some more side content to the game, as you kind of have an open world, so having some side content would go a long way to improve it. The combat and puzzles could also be improved slightly, but that's not mandatory. But other than that, I would recommend this game to anyone a fan of games similar in genre or style. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed, leave a like, and if you want to see more, subscribe, as I plan on doing more videos like this in the future. And if you made it this far, leave a comment about video games that you think have gone unnoticed by most, as I'd love to try out some new games that I might have not heard of. Anyway, that's enough from me. See you around, Crocodile.